Do you hate your phone? Brilliant. You guys can't see this. He's just drawn a face on his iPhone. I mean, that is a man with money to burn, frankly. Hello and welcome back. And that is right. Today we want to talk about AI in NAS and why it might actually be a good thing. It's something we've talked about a lot here on the channel. And next year, 2025, right now we're recording this in December, can you tell? And next year we're going to be talking a lot more about AI, just like everyone else, but within the context of NAS, because pretty much all of the NAS brands are having their own kind of weird Cold War at the moment for which one of them can locally deploy AI and LLM services the best. I know that seems like an over-exaggeration or a simplification, but it really is true. And in this video, after going through all of the comments, all of the little bits and bobs that we've done in videos throughout 2024, we summarised it down to 6 key questions about deploying NAS and AI services local. And that's really important because if you want online, they can just knack off and do ChatGPT. They've got your Google Geminis. You can get all of that. Why the big deal now? And that's what today's video is. Let's talk about local AI NAS. So straight away, Eddie, what are the benefits of AI right now in NAS and where the benefits going to be?
Exactly. There will be so many benefits actually coming across because the issues we are facing now is ChatGPT and other AI systems that they are starting to lock them down and they're limiting what you can ask, what you can't ask. So the responses are very often altered or limited and you cannot get the answers you need. And obviously the most obvious thing is like, do you want the cloud now about all your questions and your sensitive confidential data? Probably don't. And most of all, everyone who is using a NAS system, they have backup in their premises already. They have loads of files, there's like gigabytes, terabytes, whatever the size the business is. They have all this knowledge base already stored there. But it would take a human being probably years to go through all those documents and all the knowledge to give someone an answer. But AI obviously is like a human on steroids. So he can go through the documents and give you a reply in instant. So whatever the question is, something based with what I did 10 years ago, what let us succeed with that particular project, the AI is going to go through all this history, the past, and it will just come up with an answer because it has access to every single detail of your business, which is something you don't want to let AI or cloud to have access to.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's your local NAS on your table. You can actually see it, you can touch it, and this AI works locally, nothing to do with cloud. It lives locally on that NAS and has access to all of your knowledge and database. So that's why it's so important.
Because today, you've got the harnessing of things like AI in photo recognition, with subject recognition, facial recognition. Then it moved into surveillance, when you had stuff such as license plate and, human being and detection and simplifying and, removing doubt and error. So all of that is done locally at the moment anyway on the majority of these NAS platforms, and none of them using external services. It's all based in the system. But of course, in 2025, the idea it's not just about what you just said with having access to, you're harnessing all of these records, all of this information from the past and making sure that a cloud-based service isn't harnessing it, but it's about who can utilize it. Because right now you have IT system admins, IT departments who are probably not in love with the idea of AI in local servers because it will allow Sarah that works in HR to ask a human question to the database in the same way you could just Google a result to get the information. So say, again, it's a very, a bit blunt as a question, but if, say, for example, your human resources leader needs to be able to ascertain which members of staff were working during a 3-month period where losses were made, and they need to know who was working certain hours, who had access to certain services, and which of those people have been at the company long enough, and then maybe even go even deeper and go into their specific contracts, go into their specific, termination contracts. It's a grim example, but at the same time, what Sarah that works in HR can ask this in human language. She doesn't need to have spent a year learning Google Sheets and Excel. She can ask this human question and get a human response, but crucially, not bouncing from a third-party AI relay server that they've had to submit all of their data to. And with a lot of people using Google Gemini and using a lot of these online services in conjunction with PaaS and SaaS services, where they will be using Google Workspace and Office 365, where their data is already out there, the idea is to pull that data from the cloud, but also take advantage of those local AI services on the ground. All right, so next question. Where exactly is the status quo when it comes to NAS and utilising local AI? Which brands are ahead, which aren't, which are behind, and which just simply don't give an F?
Yes, there's quite a difference between those brands. So, for example, QNAP seem to be still focusing more on face recognition, object recognition, anything to do with multimedia, that sort of stuff. They haven't explored a bit further, like Synology. Synology is already working on AI, which is cloud-based, third-party AI, which is going to give access to the suite for the documents and presentations, all these things, so you can work on your documents with Assistant, which is AI. But both of these companies, they are not actually taking advantage of full features that you could have from AI. And for that reason, Ugreen is another company that is now...
Next year they're hitting that quite hard, yeah.
They are going to be doing actually locally based AI solution. We don't need to rely on the cloud. You don't need to give away any access to your precious data. And obviously there is some beginners.
Z-Labs as well. Z-Lab, they're popping up. We're going to be talking about them in January.
Yeah, we saw them in January, exactly. And they seem to take a step even further. It's not just documents, not just internal knowledge, it's entire system. They want to build the AI in the OS, so you can actually set up your NAS using AI. You can ask it to have one drive redundancy, two drive redundancy, create shared folders, connected to laptop, things like that. It's
when
like
I was using it, I just clicked the mic and just went, spin the fans up, do a scheduled on and off at 6 a.m. and 12 p.m. and it just did that.
Yeah.
You had the control panel, you can go into the control panel, but it was the idea that the front end, and this was offline, allowed me to provide those commands and get it to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So as a leader, I would now put probably Ugreen with their local-based AI, because that's going to be very crucial. So they will need to learn from Synology how to polish their product, and because they will be using cloud AI, but they can learn how they deal with AI that is cloud-based, and they can use the same knowledge and same technology in a local AI. I hope about Z-Lab, but I'm not sure about it. I hope they succeed, and they will.
Well, the only thing I would add to it as well is when it comes to QNAP and Synology, a lot of their tentative steps. So further to your point, QNAP also integrate AI services into a lot of their Q search and Q filing to browse through the system. But even then, it's kind of half of what we described, where you are looking for information and it will search almost a cloud of terms around what you're looking for and give you similar to that. And with Synology, with their AI console, AI admin console, it currently looks like it's going to be locked in to their collaboration suite of applications. And as you say, it integrates those third-party cloud services. You get to choose your own cloud provider. I believe it supports Gemini and it supports ChatGPT, and I think there's a couple of others as well. I think Azure's own AI. But even with that, you're still locked in on an ecosystem, and you still have to use a third party. So it seems half and half, and I feel like it's a development that is primed to disappoint both parties, because it is half-assing both. When, let's face it, in the world of network-attached storage, Synology is still one of the biggest players, and I'm kind of surprised that they haven't looked into front-mounted system control, given a lot of their rhetoric and a lot of their, universal selling point is that, unique selling point that theirs is the most user-friendly platform. But it'll be interesting to see a year from now when this does become the status quo, because we haven't even talked about a lot of other players that are utilising third-party local platforms. We talked about the mobile drives that went up there. They've already integrated AI search terms and AI services into this mobile drive, and that's running on an ARM. It just also has NPU levels on it and support, which mean it's ready, and that's a smaller player. So it's interesting. It's going to be great to have this conversation in a year to see just how far it's come.
You know, there are hard drive manufacturers, SSD manufacturers.
Yeah.
So, what is their role in all this? How do they contribute to the system?
I mean, it's a good point because most AI is taking place on the cloud. So the idea of localizing that, there is the big question mark about the speed of retrieval. I mean, hard drives are never going to be ideal as a means of retrieving this information for AI services. A lot of it is about the fundamentals of that data being nailed down by indexing for the AI to have a lot of that structure in the first place, but ultimately it is going to come down to SSD. I mean, one of the things you touched on in the introduction there was the way that an AI accesses data. It isn't sequential almost, it is kind of like print, snap. It's looking at the data as a whole. And to retrieve such a huge amount of data, it is going to be largely based on SSDs. Caching to a point, but you get to a point where if you don't already know the data that's being accessed, caching it is not going to be very good. When we were playing around with the ZLab system, you had to effectively give it time to index an existing database. You had to tell it, this is the data, the hot data that you're going to be accessing from. And that was data that was on a single hard drive. So when you would do a search along the lines of, for example, I'm looking for, and this goes back to media, I'm looking for files in a human request. Sorry, I tapped my mic there. A human request of I want all of the photos between this date of people, of at least 2 people in this country taken on this kind of resolution. And that was a question we asked the system to do and retrieve that information. But how much of that was achieved via prior indexing, it's hard to know. But when it comes to hard drives and SSDs, I think hard drives do have a place in this for the larger archival, but SSDs are really where it's going to be at for this local AI deployment on an NAS.
Yeah, I think there will be a combination of hard drive storage and SSD storage because colder data can live on hard drives, and I think caching will be used because so often people ask the same question. And like with IT services, usually people ask, what's wrong with my system? And the first suggestion what IT support guy will say, like, did you shut it down? Did you reboot the system? So that's the question what they need to go through all the time. And the same is going to be with AI-based questions. There will be questions that are repetitive. So instead of to put the strain on the hardware, to get these answers again from the database, if database is big, the caching will be important. And sometimes, I think, based also on the requests that people make, the AI could also work on this new data, which is based on requests. So you have your knowledge base, you have request-based database, and then you have the live ongoing AI. So you can actually combine the existing need, what people have in business, and long-based storage.
I mean, again, and the other thing with AI, and again, we can reference cloud and lots of the remote cloud-based AI services and LLMs that people use, but a lot of the fundamental language understanding is already hard cooked and baked into the AI service. It's just going to be a question of how much space that's going to take up on the system primarily for it to have those fundamentals nailed down. But the other thing is wherever that crazy noise was, it's better than a seagull, right? But at the same time, you've got this whole need of when you do have all of this data laid out within your system in a certain way. A lot of companies that use AI services to access their data in a more efficient and intelligent manner, they already give specifications. They already give databases that have already been cooked into this shape. So it'll be, these are the x-axis and the y-axis, these are what's important. So then when you ask the question, the AI it knows the context of the question. So it's whether these open-ended AIs are going to effectively, in the beginning, guide you through a process where you're effectively applying malleable labels to that data locally. I think without that, unless what you're doing with the NAS is incredibly pedestrian, which I don't think it will be after a very short amount of time, people's demands are always going to vastly outgrow design. But I do think it will be a case of telling the NAS vaguely what is important. So it'll be a case of, it will know, for example, in the upload a CSV, that these are the staffing, these are the groups, these are now down fundamentals, but it will be an extension of that logic. And how that translates to a local AI in a user-friendly fashion is going to be crucial, because that is what lets Sarah and HR ask human-friendly questions without the need of a system IT admin and get the results immediately. So I mean, we've got to talk about security, because one of the main driving attractions of local-based AI is, on the face of it, it destroys the whole anti-security argument of using cloud-based AI, that you're handing your data over to some dodgy third party, big or small. And local-based AI utilization means that you are the one harnessing the efficiency and the abilities of the AI using your data locally. But the question is security, concern zero? I don't think so. But what do you think are the security problems, or even a local-based AI that has no internet access?
If there is no internet access, you always need to remember about human factor as well, because there could be, if in your building you're inviting guests or something like that, they could potentially connect to your network. For example, sometimes you need to be careful with USB drives. The hackers could get into your local system and steal data this way, so you need to be careful about those things. And obviously, NAS is actually a very good ecosystem already for AI, because we have this folder management, user management built in.
Default,
so you don't need to reinvent AI solution in your business. You have your NAS, which is actually already with security in mind. Everything is there, so you can set access to specific departments that can ask those queries and do access, can have access to the database of all this sensitive data. So I would say it's like very secure, but you always need to remember, just like your computer, you need to keep it updated. You need to be having it secure about behind firewalls, and obviously the human factors as well need to be considered.
I would go one further. I would say a system that is utilizing AI as its means of control and its means of retrieval of information opens the door, if they're not using strong enough unique elements, to bar, if not another AI, then predictable layers of security. Whereas right now, you can have a NAS that's got randomized ports, you can have two-factor authentication, you can have dedicated trusted client devices and more. You've got all of those elements right now. Once you've got an AI in the system, you have to give it a certain amount of control and access if you are going to be utilizing it to access. If you're not trusting a system admin, your IT department, to retrieve that information or at least manage the system, and then you're going to be harnessing an AI to do it, that means you are giving what is ostensibly a faceless employee a large amount of access to your existing data, and therefore this employee isn't going to be randomized. This AI, localized, deployed, call it what you will, your new Al in business, he is going to have a tremendous amount of access. And at the same time, it is going to be built on an algorithm. It's going to be built on one AI that's going to be, for example, we're just going to say Synology out the air. If you go for Synology there, you mentioned it earlier on, that if they are utilizing third-party AI support on their apps will have to have some defaults to work with those AI services, whether it is you use one of the big 3 or big 5 AIs. So having a localized deployed AI doesn't really shut the door in terms of security just because it doesn't have outside access, because now you've introduced a default employee who has to have fixed defaults. And that's my concern, that fixed defaults user that opens the door to exploitation, in the same way that cloud services, when they get hacked, it's because security is, if not predictable, then it has to be the same for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of users, for the sake of simplicity. That's my only security concern when it comes to local AI deployment. That companies, if 100,000 companies use the same NAS server and they all integrate and use the AI services, a lot of the randomized nature of their security protocol will need, at this trunking point here, to be the same for the AI to do its job, and that's what concerns me.
Yeah, but there's one thing what you shouldn't be concerned about is that the AI is going to take over the world. It's not going to upset, it doesn't have emotion. If you talk to the local AI in a not that nice way, it's not going to decide to destroy your data. Something to just... Some people get it wrong. They think that AI is like
that was one of the main motivations for this video. It was that a lot of people hear the word AI and they think about particularly AI in their NAS and they think, no, I'm not letting that in, I'm not letting a security vulnerability into my system, or they will attack certain companies or attack certain regions of the world and just immediately think that equals security issue. And I get the worry.
Terminator comes in
even when installing a third-party app is just as unsafe. The concern for me is that some people will lose out on these benefits down the road. I mean, I still speak to some people today that aren't aware of their NAS system for almost 8 years, I think even 9 in some cases, has had AI-supported categorization services, not just with photos and video, but file management as well, where it would have saved them, hundreds, if not thousands of hours over that time in terms of efficiency. And this is one of those deal-breaker moments where you've got an entire industry and we are talking about small NAS players. You can go high to SAN, you can go to hyperscale, you can go to all of these places that have got a cloud service, but they've also got bare metal, multi-site deployment. They're all just waiting for the most secure, locally deployed AI with no internet services. And, we're on very much the cusp of that now, and it is presentations of going, Skynet has risen, I think is not. It's telling a very false narrative sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes, but still. All right then, let's roll around in the mud a bit. What are the negatives? Let's be realistic. We've already talked about security being a negative, but what are the other negatives of the introduction of AI services into, and again, I say NAS servers, but these are a question of scale. What are the negatives? Keep it low. Be as low as you want. What is the negatives of locally deployed AI in network attached storage?
It's not just locally, it's like in general, AI is created to build a superhuman, which is like artificial intelligence. So who is in risk with that going to compete with human beings? So obviously we're going to replace human beings or certain roles with AI, with this virtual version of an employee. So in the future, we're going to be hiring AI models rather than human beings. So that's the future. Whoever is going to have more resources, more money, they will have more AI employees in their businesses, and they'll be succeeding more, and they'll grow faster.
My friend Eddie, everyone. Okay, yes, so you make a very good point there. A really quite fantastically miserable point. Job losses and that kind. I mean, it's going to benefit development. It's going to benefit, I would say, the evolution of what a lot of these services that we do can do. When it comes to data retrieval, we've already talked about data retrieval. But if we're going to talk about other negatives, it's going to result in a very bland landscape, I would say, because I love network attached storage and service and data storage. I also know there are a lot of people that work in IT, system admins and services going, this is going to be the end of our jobs. And, there is an element of miserable truth in that. But also I think it's going to lead to a very bland landscape of solutions. And that concerns me, because I do think, obviously for some people, data storage and networking is just a set up and forget. But I quite like this technology, and I think the way things have evolved in the 25 years, let's take Synology on their own, but we could look at any of these brands, the way they've evolved their solutions for home, for business, and for everything in between. I think there is the potential that AI will make things efficient, it will make things work better than it's ever worked, but I do think you still need a human mind, and you need to respond to human demands of what they want these systems to do in an interesting capacity and a dull, efficient business capacity. And I think that is going to be lost. I think one of the biggest downsides of integrating NAS systems with localized AI is the minute you open that door, development will go down that road, which it already is. But I think the more we see AI being used with data and networking, the less inspiring it will be, the less colourful it will become, and that concerns me.
Oh, it's fine. On AliExpress, I saw that they are now making these robotic arms, so people can have virtual hugs. So I think that emotional quite part of
is everything okay?
It's not going to be good. The AI is going to give you a hug.
But there you go. On that uplifting note, I think we'll end it there. What do you guys think? This is a discussion we're going to be having a lot next year, realistically. A lot of the brands that we talk about are now doing their arms race towards deploying AI locally on their systems. So it'll be fantastic to talk to you guys about it. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Maybe there's some points we missed that you want to talk about. We could talk about power consumption and stuff like that, but it's just too early to say. But thank you so much for watching. Eddie, thanks for letting me come to your new space over here. Hopefully we're going to see more videos from here. Otherwise, head over to Digibyte. That's the B channel. You can head over there. We've got lots of slightly less NAS specific. There's NAS stuff in there, but you kind of play with all
It's
the
more
coding
like-
and all that kind of
yeah.
stuff. So do check that out. But thank you so much for watching. Thanks for having me over, and we will see you next time.